Inflation. It's a word you're hearing everywhere, right? At the grocery store, at the gas pump, all over the news. It hits our wallets, our savings, our future. But what is really going on behind that rising price tag? Well, in this explainer, we're going to demystify inflation and break down one of the most powerful forces shaping our entire economy.
I mean, we've all been there. You look at a $100 bill, and it just doesn't seem to stretch the way it once did. You are not imagining things. That feeling, that's the direct personal effect of inflation. And it's exactly what we're going to unpack right now.
All right, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about your shrinking dollar. Then we're going to peek under the hood at the inflation engine. After that, we'll see who the winners and losers are, figure out how it's all measured, and finally understand why it's really a double-edged sword.
So let's just dive right in with the basics. What does it actually mean when we say our dollars are shrinking? Okay, the key here, and this is really important, is that inflation isn't just a sudden spike in gas prices. It's a broad, sustained increase in the cost of pretty much everything. We're talking housing, food, cars, the works. It's the overall trend that matters, not just one or two items getting a little pricier. And that brings us to the other side of the coin, purchasing power. This is all about what your money can actually buy. So, as inflation goes up, your purchasing power goes down. You know, think about it like this. Back in the 1950s, 50 cents could get you a movie ticket. Today, you'd be lucky if that got you a gumball. That's purchasing power eroding right in front of us.
And this right here is the fundamental relationship. As the overall price of things goes up, the value of each and every dollar in your wallet, its ability to buy a slice of the economic pie, it shrinks. Your money is worth less, not because the number on the bill changed, but because its power to purchase things has gone way down.
So, what's actually causing all this? What's firing up this inflation engine and pushing all these prices higher and higher? Well, it usually boils down to two main forces.
So economists usually point to two main culprits. First, on the left, you've got demand-pull inflation. This is that classic too much money chasing too few goods scenario. You know, when everybody wants to buy more stuff than the economy can actually produce, well, prices get bid up. Then on the right, you have cost-push inflation. This happens when it just costs more to make things. Maybe oil prices or wages go up. Businesses aren't going to just absorb that, so they pass those higher costs on to us.
But you know, it's not always quite that simple. Other things can pour fuel on the fire. Government policies, for example, can give demand a huge boost. Supply shocks, think natural disasters or big global events, can suddenly make goods really scarce. And then there's the whole psychological game. If everyone expects prices to go up, they start acting in ways that, well, make prices go up. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Now, you might think inflation is just bad for everyone, right? But the reality is a lot more complicated. It actually creates this fascinating economic tug-of-war with some very clear winners and some very clear losers.
Okay, let's break down this divide. So who benefits? Well, borrowers with fixed-rate loans, they kind of win, because they get to repay their debt with money that's worth less over time. People who own assets, like real estate, they often do well too. But who gets hurt? Savers, for sure. The cash they've tucked away just gets devalued. And people on fixed incomes, like retirees, they really struggle as their buying power just shrinks. And honestly, lower-income households feel the pinch the most, because necessities, food, gas, rent, take up a much bigger chunk of their budget.
So with the prices of everything changing all the time, how in the world do economists boil all of that down to just a single number? How do they make it all add up?
Well, to get a handle on inflation, you first have to measure it. But you can't possibly track the price of every single thing. So economists use this pretty clever tool called a price index. The whole idea is to track a representative basket of goods and services.
And the most famous of these is the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI. Just think of it like a giant official shopping list. Government agencies create this market basket of things a typical family buys. Everything from a gallon of milk to a doctor's visit to a new pair of shoes. They track the prices of over 80,000 of these items every single month. And the change in the total cost of that basket, that's what gives us the CPI, our headline inflation number.
So, what's the right amount of inflation? You might be surprised to hear the target isn't zero. Most central banks actually aim for about 2% a year. See, a little bit of inflation encourages spending and investment, which keeps the economy humming. The alternative, falling prices, or deflation, can be an absolute disaster because people just put off buying things and the economy can grind to a halt.
So it's this incredibly delicate balancing act to keep things moving without letting prices spiral out of control.
So, as we've seen, inflation is, well, it's a complex beast. It's not simply good or bad. It's a really powerful force with two very distinct edges. So let's just recap the key takeaways.
All right, let's nail this down. First, inflation is that rising tide of prices that just makes your money buy less. Second, it's mostly driven by either way too much demand or by rising costs. Third, it creates those clear economic winners and losers. And finally, remember, the goal isn't to get rid of inflation completely, but to manage it, aiming for that 2% sweet spot to keep our economy healthy.
And that leaves us with one last really crucial question. For decades, we've relied on this playbook for managing inflation. But in a world that's being totally reshaped by global supply shocks and incredible new technologies, will the old rules still apply? Is our entire framework for even understanding inflation ready for the economy of the future?